What's going on, everybody? Welcome into this Locked On crossover. Sooners meet the Huskers on this Locked On crossover, your team every single day. I'm Josh Helmer of 94.7 The Ref, and of course, right here, Locked On Sooners. Derrick Pearson, my guest of Locked On Huskers, and of course, 93.7 The Ticket in Lincoln, where you can check him out every single day. Derrick, man, let's not bury the lead on this thing for Oklahoma, Nebraska, part two of this home and home. It was a great game last season. We wondered kind of then, was Scott Frost inching toward his final legs in Lincoln? Obviously, that wound up being the case as he was relieved of his duties following the Georgia Southern loss. Just take us through what it's been like being on the air in Lincoln and everything that has happened with Scott Frost and now Mickey Joseph stepping in an interim role.
We got the news when my phone blew up about 12:30, 12:35 to be exact, because it's still on my phone. And I had just got done with a Sunday morning show, and I had to spin and turn around and head back to the station again. It was an all points, all hands on deck. We kind of knew that's what was going to be required. In the initial announcement, it said that they just decided that Trevor Alberts and the crew decided they were going to move in a different direction, and that the interim head coach would be former Husker Mickey Joseph, who was the passing game coordinator and the wide receivers coach. So as we gathered, the story became more about why now? The $7.5 million issue of if they wait until October 1st, then they remove that. But if you know anything about Nebraska athletics, you know that the money wasn't the issue. So the home loss against the Sun Belt Conference bottom tier team at night, when you had the Hall of Fame inductees for the year there on the sideline, the opportunities there, the second worst defensive output in Nebraska history at home. The 600 plus yards just had not been seen, several opportunities. And then for us, we ended up being on air in a rotation for up until 10 o'clock Sunday night. And it was just crazy. It was just call after call, text after text, email after email. And the questions ranged in three places: why now, what next, and who next? And I've worked from this. Mickey Joseph is the interim head coach. I'm a former coach myself, so I don't root for anybody to get fired. I just don't believe in it. I know there's a way to get success. That's what you're rooting for. That's what you're hoping for. You're rooting for the players to get closure, because the players have been on edge all season long because they didn't know where the coaching staff stood. Then the questions were, is it Mark Whipple, who's the offensive coordinator? Is it Mickey Joseph? Is it Eric Shenander? Shenander removed himself from it by Saturday night's performance of his defense. But then it fell back to when Mickey Joseph was hired, he was given the title associate head coach. So everything was in place. This has been ongoing. This isn't an overnight thing. This isn't a last minute thing. There was a plan in case things went left. They went left. They operated the plan. And now, what happens now? There have been some small changes within the coaching staff and more changes in the operational aspect of it, how practices are run and that sort of thing. But Mickey Joseph is the guy in charge. And the players, from the mouth of the players themselves, exhaled, because now they know who's going to take them through the next 9 games or whatever the season is. And now they can focus on what they should be here to do, which is win football games.
Not too long ago, right here on Locked On Sooners and just radio in Norman, we had that similar situation where all of a sudden you're replacing a head football coach, albeit obviously different circumstances with Lincoln Riley leaving to go to USC. So you talked about it a little bit there, Derrick. What is sort of your take? I know what it's like to be a part of that 10-hour, 11-hour marathon radio day, but why now? Why now? What is sort of your answer to that question?
Well, if it comes down to, should the coach be fired or not? The money part of it can't be how you operate or how you function, especially when you're a university and an athletic department that has the reserve of money that Nebraska does. So then the fact that the loss was at home, it was the lead-in to the rivalry of all rivalries for Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska, Oklahoma is where the legacies are built and stored. And if you're bringing the national TV folks to Lincoln, Nebraska, what you don't want the story to be is what's next. You remove something from the pool, something from the water. Look, 16-31 doesn't get it. I mean, that should never be the discussion here. In Lincoln, Nebraska, at Memorial Stadium, no Nebraska team should ever be in a competition with Georgia Southern, let alone having to fight for its life and then not finding a way to make it work. So, yeah, it needed to be done. The move was quick. I was surprised that it was Sunday morning, but all day long, all day Sunday, all day Monday, the Husker Nation, and when we talk about Husker Nation, Sooner Nation understands it, that it's bigger than just the local. It's bigger than just the region. All the folks from around the world came running the 93.7 The Ticket for information and to vent and to heal and to get settled into what's next. And I think we landed firmly on having a former Husker, a national champion, somebody that was brought in for this very reason. It's good to have Mickey Joseph here, forward and up from here.
Well, that's the next question I had for you. So what can you tell us about Mickey Joseph, obviously now the interim head football coach at the University of Nebraska?
Rock solid. Rock solid. He's a grown-up. He's a grown man. And what he loved, the way the players love him, one, people know that his recruiting capability is off the charts. He's one of the best recruiters in the country. And that translates into his coaching because he's evolved. He's taken this passing game that was off filter last year. They got it going. They're putting up 36 points a game. That's not an issue. You've got Casey Thompson to wing it, but he's got receivers who believe in him. And that's important here, to have guys that believe in him. The rest of the guys, he started recruiting linemen. He just started helping recruiting on the defensive side of the ball. He helped with other coaches. So Mickey Joseph is the right guy for it. I'm a firm believer, and we've had this discussion all over the area. I think that Mickey Joseph is the guy for next year. I think the interim, he has a chance because he's in the job and he's capable of it. Remember, that LSU run, he's produced three of the greatest new receivers to come into the league. So he knows what he's doing. Now, if he can get the other folks on board with him, it should be Mickey Joseph's job. I hope that it's Mickey Joseph's job. Saturday is the first step into that, and it'll play out whether we believe he should be or not.
So one of the items that I talked about on the radio down here in Norman for maybe why now in Nebraska, right? And I'll admit, I was a little bit surprised that they didn't wait for the buyout to drop for, obviously before they made the change for the Cornhuskers. The Big Ten West, I mean, you kind of look at what's happening across the division, and if you're not looking big macro picture of just the Big Ten itself, just in the West, Iowa loses to Iowa State, right? Been a little while since that happened. We saw a Northwestern team, obviously, that beat Nebraska. They lose to Duke. We saw a Wisconsin team at home lose to Washington State. So the Big Ten West and Purdue, right? Another team that people think, okay, well, they can win this side of the Big Ten. They've already lost to Penn State. So from that standpoint, do you think that part of it was sort of one of the reasons that this happened when it did, that Nebraska still feels, okay, we can salvage this thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, if Northwestern's the only team in the Big Ten West that has a win in the Big Ten West, and you know that they're probably vulnerable, look, if you do your job, if Nebraska does its job under Mickey Joseph, they win the Big Ten West. They win the Big Ten West. I mean, that's how this thing should play out. And if anybody in the program believed that this was going to be an 8 or 9 win team to begin the season, well, you looked at the schedule, you thought you might be 2-1 or 2-2 or 3-1 after Oklahoma anyway. So it doesn't really matter. Plus, there's a bye week next week. So whatever changes need to be made, whatever adjustments need to be made, and then you get into a part of the schedule that you expect it to be successful in anyway. So you assume nothing now because you don't know if a team that's 1-2. But if I'm Mickey Joseph and crew, I'm looking forward to Saturday because it's an opportunity with nothing to lose. less known about the Husker team that's going to take the field on Saturday. Like, it's really hard to scout them because you don't know what they're going to do under Whipple and Mickey Joseph. Like, the mad scientists and the offensive genius have been in the lab for a couple of days. I would imagine that all bets are off and the playbook is wide open. It is a great opportunity, a chance for the fan base to get reconnected and re-energized, and then for the players to find their way and to get their legs and to regain. So, yeah, it's a great opportunity.
One more on Mickey Joseph, and then let's start diving into just the matchup itself. What sort of the two presentations, I guess, are respectively from the Sooners and the Huskers in this game. Mickey Joseph, you said you're hoping that there's a legitimate chance that once this thing is all said and done, Trev Alberts is looking at this and he's a legitimate candidate to take over full time. So with that being said, Derrick, what do you think needs to happen for that to be the case, for Mickey Joseph to be a legitimate candidate and get a long and serious look as being the next full-time Huskers head coach?
Josh, I'm going to be Coach Joseph in this. And I'm going to speak his words that he spoke at the press conference that he's talked about one-to-one. It's one game at a time, that we have to be the best version of ourselves that day. Like, we just that's it. He can't look down the road. He doesn't have the footing to do that. He's focused on Oklahoma. And everything that's required for them to beat Oklahoma is going to be the focus. Now, if he does his job and everything goes well, it's only good for the day because he's got to then go on to the next thing. He is a one game at a time, single focus kind of man. I hate to speak for him, so I use his words that way. I'm safe. I'm safe. Beat Oklahoma is a great start. Play well within that space. No matter what the result is, be better than you were than against Georgia Southern. And then you've got a bye week, and then you can retool and redirect. Look, he's got the job. For all intents and purposes, he's going to have to lose the job to to be removed and replaced. At least in my mind, he has the opportunity week by week, as they say here, day by day, play by play. He has an opportunity to not only keep the job, but then be the focus and the director going forward. I fully expect for him to get it done, but that's just me.
I love it. I love the optimism. So let's dive into just this matchup itself, what it presents.
Before we continue our great crossover edition of the Locked On Sooners podcast here with Derrick Pearson and Josh Helmer, I want to talk to you about BetOnline. It's the #1 source for all your sports betting needs. Get your Oklahoma, Nebraska lines over there at BetOnline. Right now, Oklahoma is considered a 10.5 point favorite over the Cornhuskers, and the over-under is set at 66.5. If you want to get in on that action, go to BetOnline. It, again, is your #1 source for all your sports betting needs. They've got you covered from football to baseball, NHL, NBA futures, MMA, boxing, whatever you need, you got it over at BetOnline. Again, that's BetOnline, where the game starts.
On this on crossover here, Josh Helmer, Derrick Pearson, obviously John Williams alongside as well. So let's talk about the personnel in this matchup. Oklahoma, Derrick, they're familiar with the quarterback of Nebraska because guess what? He tossed 5 touchdown passes on him in the Red River Showdown not too awfully long ago for the Texas Longhorns. So what have you seen from Casey Thompson at the quarterback position? I mean, right now, it doesn't seem like offense has been much of a problem in Lincoln.
The offense hasn't been the issue. Their best offensive player coming into the season, Travis Vokalek, got hurt early on. That's affected because that's the safety net for Casey Thompson. What we found out about Casey through the recruiting process, through that transfer portal, and we knew that he was in the Oklahoma circle, right? So this is a thing that you expected to have. And it was interesting to hear Brian will talk about it, that, well, no, we wanted the guy, so we know him. I didn't know he was the high IQ quarterback that he is. His ability to break down what he sees, what he's trying to do from play to play, from scheme to scheme, is pretty top level. I have to commend the young man because when he speaks, he is a storyteller. He understands what his job is. We didn't know that Anthony Grant was going to be the player that he's been, at 400 plus yards over the course of the first 3 games. We didn't know that young A.J. Allen was going to come in and light it up as running back, as RB2. And then finding out from the 4 receivers that Casey Thompson has to throw to, he's got some weapons, and they're playing well. Just like Oklahoma, the issue in the conversation here has been about the offensive line. So Oklahoma fans, you understand. Well, they got some offensive line issues. And then the inability from the offensive side of the ball. They brought in a kicker that thought that was going to be dead on. He's 1 for 4. And it's just the little things keep adding up. They're putting up 36 points a game. They should be 3-0. They're not. They're 1-2 because things just don't add up.
So those wide receivers, I know you talked about them, Derrick, but if you can expound a little bit on a Trey Palmer, on a Marcus Washington, on an Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, and then even in Omar Manning, what has Nebraska got in that group right there? And I know that a bunch of these guys are faces that came from somewhere else. So how has kind of all of that coalesced?
Trey Palmer came with Mickey Joseph from LSU. So an explosive playmaker, open field extraordinaire, really good in possession. He's had a couple of drops that he's been angry about, but he's the factor. He's the one that he has, as Reggie used to say, I'm the straw that stirs the drink. Well, Trey Palmer is the straw that stirs the drink. If Vokalek is on field, he's the biggest issue for Oklahoma. If Vokalek plays, he's an issue. If not, it's Chancellor Brewington, smaller version who gets in the seam, stretches defense from the middle, gets up on the hash and does work. Marcus Washington is a Casey Thompson best friend buddy. Like, they know each other. They know Oklahoma. So that has been beneficial. He's starting to expand himself. His presence is important. But Casey spreads the ball around. Garcia Castaneda might be the X factor against Oklahoma, but the way that Oklahoma defends. So in those spaces, being able to get a third corner, get a nickel corner on IGC, as we call him, then there's an advantage. Whoever gets the nickel is probably going to get the work this Saturday.
Biggest key for you in your mind offensively for Nebraska in this football game is?
Offensive line, pass pro. My goodness gracious, for the fact that Oklahoma leads the country, the entire universe in tackles for loss and sacks, that's a problem for this makeshift piecemeal offensive line. And we don't know if the best offensive lineman, Teddy Prohaska, is even going to play. So, yeah, that's issue. I think Nebraska will be able to run the ball. I really do, just because of spacing and timing. But if they can't defend, protect Casey Thompson off the edge and with the boundary, it's going to be a long day in Lincoln. A long day.
Other side of the football, defensively for Nebraska, trying to slow down Dylan Gabriel and company for Oklahoma. Man, there's some nice players on this Nebraska defense. I know it hasn't gone well, but both Reimer and Nelson coming into this season, I think, are guys that people felt pretty positively about. So what type of players are on this Nebraska defense? Let's just start there, the strictly personnel question. What is on this Nebraska defense?
Well, the 3 best players on defense all play the same position. That's a problem because only 2 of them are on the field at the same time. They're trying to work, and I would imagine that this week some of the work would be in getting Garrett Nelson, who would be the preseason all Big Ten consideration. On the backside, Caleb Tanner, the more athletic edge, and then O'Shawn Mathis, who was the transfer portal diamond that comes in, put up 10 tackles in the first game. But the concern is the inability to get home to the quarterback. Now, we know that Oklahoma has issue defending that in that pass pro. So I would imagine that Nebraska will stir up some spaces where all 3 of those guys are on the field. Nebraska's issue has been up the middle. Losing Damian Daniels and Ben Stilley from last year, the replacements and the next players up haven't measured up. There's been a huge gaping hole in the middle of the defensive line far too often, putting too much pressure on Luke Reimers and Nick Heinrich. It's too much. Ernest Hausman is a true freshman who played 80 plays. It's too much for a true freshman. Look, the kid's going to be all conference, maybe all America in 2 years. Right now, he's swimming in deep water. A secondary that's long, it's athletic, but it just hasn't clicked. It just hasn't clicked. Tackling, issue 1 and issue 2. Tackling and getting pressure on the quarterback, those have been the things that have put Nebraska in trouble. I would imagine some changes in scheme. I would imagine some changes in personnel. Shenander has a refocus. He's been moved to focus on the safeties. Travis Fisher has been moved out to handle the corners and nickelbacks. Hopefully that shows up in an aggressive tackling defense. Now, they spent a ton of time this week putting people on the ground. That's what we hope, that the tackling shows up on Saturday.
I know that has been, Derrick, a familiar complaint over the years in Norman that, man, why are they not more physical throughout the spring and then into fall camp and what have you? They clearly, because the lack of tackling, especially early in seasons, has been a real Achilles heel for Oklahoma. And I'm sure, that's not Oklahoma specific. That's kind of college football in 2020, 2021, and 2022, these last 4 or 5 years, however long it's been. So the fact that, again, maybe there is that culture shift to, hey, let's be physical in practice. How optimistic are you? Final question, and then I'll let you flip it kind of back around on me and ask some Oklahoma questions. How optimistic are you that can be a puzzle piece that, frankly, gets a defense playing the right way that has struggled mightily so far?
Look, the optimism is in the intent and the operation. I know from practice that they've put more people on the ground. I know that they're working on it, that it became a priority. As a matter of fact, let's get loose and then let's hit. So hopefully it shows up on Saturday. If not, it'll be what it's been, and then they'll have 2 weeks to work on it over the course of the bye week. But optimism, yes. Trust, maybe not. Maybe not, Josh. I'll ask you, because a lot of the Oklahoma boards have been talking about this offensive line. And somehow, to me, with all the talent on this line, there has to be some answer to why are they struggling? Why are they struggling in pass pro? They're running the ball pretty well, but the pass pro seems to be problematic.
It's a good question. Obviously, Wanye Morris is somebody that for Oklahoma was projected to be a starting offensive tackle for this Sooner team. And because of some suspension things, missed games 1 and 2, he's not officially been listed as back for this Nebraska game, but a little birdie around Norman has not been awfully quiet. It sounds like Wanye Morris a great chance to play in this Nebraska game. So the Sooners are hoping that is one little puzzle piece that can maybe get this thing flipped in a positive direction for them. Beyond that, you say that they ran it well, and they did in chunks in that second half of their last game, but they also had 13 rushes for 7 yards in the first half. So it's been kind of problematic really across the board for Oklahoma. There's been good rushing spurts for the Sooners. Pass protection, yes, has been a problem for Oklahoma really both games in spots. So across the board, I think Oklahoma fans and reporters would tell you really not just even the first 2 games of this season, but dating back to last year as well. It's not been the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line play in Norman these last couple of years, and that has been a real point of contention. I don't know that there's a simple fix to it. I don't know that Wanye Morris coming back is the immediate fix in that regard either, but Oklahoma definitely hopeful that that's one piece that can help there.
Josh, I'll ask you, is Dylan a game manager, or is he a leader?
Well, he's a leader, man. He's not a game manager. Dylan Gabriel is explosive, vertically throwing the football down the field. I think he's a better runner than probably he would get credit for nationally. I don't think, look, I'm not saying that Dylan Gabriel's anything like Kyler Murray or a bunch of other quarterbacks for Oklahoma or Nebraska greats of yesteryear. I'm not saying that, but I think that sometimes, surprisingly, he'll be able to tuck it and run it a little bit. I think he's better at extending plays, again, than maybe he gets credit for. And this is somebody that has thrown for a lot of passing yards and has upwards of 70 touchdowns passing throughout his collegiate career. I know that initially that was at Central Florida, but this is somebody, man, that as soon as he arrived in Norman, in part, Derrick, because of his previous relationship with Jeff Levy, I mean, he came right in and you said the word, is he, a leader? He was the one that was coaching this offense up on, hey, this is what XYZ looks like in this Jeff Levy offense. So there's no doubt that once the permanent captains at Oklahoma are announced, I'm willing to, anything that's in the bank account, put it down, Dillon Gabriel. They haven't announced those permanent captains at Oklahoma yet, but Dillon Gabriel, he's definitely going to be one of them.
One final thing, Josh. How good is Marvin Mims Jr.?
Well, he's special. He's special. He obviously has played both inside and out for Oklahoma. Last week was really nice to see from Marvin Mims. You talk about, pieces of contention in Norman, Oklahoma, for everything that was great with Lincoln Riley. And I've tried to be careful to not be someone that, as soon as Lincoln Riley bolts for USC, suddenly everything Lincoln Riley did in Norman, Oklahoma was bad. That wasn't the case, and certainly wasn't the case offensively, though, like any other head coach or offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, it wasn't all perfect either. And one of the things that I think a lot of Oklahoma fans didn't like about how last season played out was Marvin Mims just didn't get targeted as much as you would think a number one wide receiver should get targeted. And Jeff Levy, historically, one thing, Derrick, that he does, he might be guilty of feeding the number one wide receiver a little bit too much in terms of targets. He might go the direction of going to the number one guy maybe more often than he should. So that was nice, though, and I think a nice change of scenery for Oklahoma fans to see somebody that we think is a superstar in Marvin Mims get treated like that and get all of the targets that he did a week ago. I think Nebraska fans, get ready, because there's a good chance you could get a healthy dose of that this weekend.
Fully expecting it. Hopefully they're prepared. I'm excited. I'm told that Bosworth is going to be in town with Larry the Cable Guy and company. So all the Husker greats are coming in. Mike Rozier's coming to town. Just interviewed Johnny Rodgers today. It's going to be a crazy week here in Lincoln.
So how do you, I guess, final question for me, Derrick, how do you see this thing playing out? Give a final score prediction if you want to. You don't have to. If you're saving that for the radio, then save it for the radio. But what's sort of your read on this game?
I expect a shootout. Nebraska, I would expect offensively will do some things that create some problems for Oklahoma defensively. They haven't had to face this year, just from being able to spread and having 3 or 4 quality receivers on the field at the same time and 2 runners who can put their foot in the ground. But I also expect Nebraska's defense to have some issues. This is a learning curve. So I'm going to buckle in. I'm going to grab my popcorn. I'll sit in media row and just sit back and enjoy myself at one of the great football rivalries in this country's history. It's time that these guys play each other on a regular basis. It's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to it.
So one final question. I was dishonest with you, Derrick. Non-conference game for Oklahoma and Nebraska going forward. What do you think about that, of this being kind of a permanent return? Oklahoma all of a sudden, because of this SEC move, it's not been received particularly well in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So there's at least one date that might be open.
Or two.
Indeed.
Make it regular. Make it regular. Proximity, neighborhood, legacy, history. All those things in place. Everybody recruits better because of it. Everybody's revenue is better because of it. Drop the egos and let this be on the regular schedule.
I love it. That is a perfect place to finish right here on this Locked On crossover. I guess maybe we broke a little bit of news on this thing. Derrick Pearson taking over at Locked On Huskers. Derrick, welcome aboard, man. Enjoy the football game. It should be fun, my friend.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate you, bro. And it should be a good one.
And for my buddy John Williams, myself, Josh Helmer, right here, your team every single day right here on the Locked On Network. That's going to do it for us. We can't wait. Sooners and Huskers, just like the good man intended, back together on the gridiron this weekend. It's going to be fun. Until next time, everybody, we'll see you right here on the Locked On Network.